The dark art of emotional manipulation. Every act of manipulation begins with a seed planted, not in the mind, but in the heart. Emotional manipulators don't just deceive you. They train your emotions to betray you. They make you question what's real, what's right, and most dangerously, who you are. Because the most effective form of control doesn't come from chains or threats. It comes from the illusion of choice. Emotional manipulation is not just about lies, it's about emotional leverage. They weaponize guilt, twist empathy into obedience, and turn kindness into weakness. You feel bad for them when they hurt you. You apologize for things you didn't do. And over time, you stop resisting because the manipulation becomes invisible, disguised as love, loyalty, or duty. They don't want your mind, they want your emotions to defend them, even when your logic knows the truth. Throughout history, empires have fallen not because of swords, but because of sentiment. Hitler didn't start with violence, he started with emotional contagion. Cult leaders don't begin with commandments, they begin with comfort. Corporate manipulators don't dominate meetings, they dominate moods. Emotional manipulators operate with precision. They follow a system, and whether they realize it or not, they use the same four-step formula. Step 1. Idealization. They mirror your deepest needs. They study your pain points, your insecurities, your dreams, and they become your reflection. You think you've found someone who gets you, but what they're really doing is mapping you. Step 2, dependency. They give you what you crave, validation, attention, or approval, and then make it scarce. You start chasing it, craving it, needing it. It's not love anymore, it's addiction. Step 3, devaluation. The warmth turns cold, the compliments turn into criticisms. They say things like, I'm only trying to help, or you're overreacting. They rewrite your emotions in real time, gaslighting until you start apologizing for their behavior. Step 4, control through confusion. You can't predict them, and that's the point. Uncertainty creates obsession. You stay longer, trying to understand, but understanding was never the goal, obedience was. Every manipulator knows one truth. Humans are emotional creatures first, rational creatures second. If they control your emotions, your logic will follow. It's not the insult that breaks you. It's the apology that follows. It's not the threat, it's the hope that they'll change. That hope becomes your leash. They use it to pull you back every time you start walking away. Let's examine the charismatic lover. They're magnetic, attentive, passionate, intoxicating, but soon their affection becomes conditional. They say, I miss you when you're not you. Translation? They miss the version they can control. They teach you that love is something you earn, not something you receive, and that lesson seeps into your identity. You start walking on eggshells, afraid to lose their approval. You start believing that you're the problem. Now switch scenes, the corporate puppeteer, they don't yell or insult, they praise you then replace you. They isolate employees with flattery and fear, creating silent competition. Everyone smiles, but no one speaks. That's not culture. That's conditioning. And then there's the public manipulator, the influencer, the politician, the leader. They don't tell you what to think. They make you feel what to think. They play the emotional piano of humanity. Anger, outrage, belonging, fear. They say what you're too afraid to say. They validate your pain, then redirect it toward their purpose. You think you're making a choice, but the choice was scripted long before you arrived. This is the true art of emotional manipulation, the ability to make someone love their own leash, to create obedience disguised as affection, to build devotion out of doubt. And yet, the manipulator isn't always a monster. Sometimes there's someone wounded using control as protection. Sometimes it's you, manipulating without realizing it. Because manipulation isn't just an external weapon, it's a human instinct, a survival mechanism gone wrong. So how do you see it? How do you wake up from the spell when the spell feels like love? You start by understanding the machinery, you stop reacting to words, and start observing patterns. Because the moment you recognize emotional manipulation, the spell breaks, the power shifts, and what once controlled you begins to fear you. This was the anatomy of control. Next, we'll go deeper inside the manipulator's mind. Their tactics, their triggers, and the emotional scripts they use to make you obey. Because knowledge isn't power, it's the antidote to invisible control. Let reveals the mind of the emotional manipulator. Inside that mind lies not chaos but calculation. They don't just react to emotion, they engineer it. Every smile, every silence, every tear is a move on the board, and the game isn't love, business, or loyalty. The game is control. At their core, emotional manipulators use a predictable toolkit, not of words, but of psychological pressure points. There are the 7 levers of control. Each lever operates in silence, unseen, but deeply felt. And when used in sequence, they can turn even the strongest mind into a willing participant. Let's open the playbook. Lever 1, fear of loss. Manipulators don't threaten directly. They imply what you might lose, your relationship, your job, your reputation. They speak in half sentences. I just don't know if I can keep doing this. Or maybe we should take a break. The ambiguity forces you to act. First, it triggers the primal fear of abandonment. Your brain floods with anxiety. You chase reassurance. And in doing so, you give them control. Lever 2, guilt and obligation. This one's insidious. They weaponize your morality. You're the only one I can trust. I did everything for you, and this is how you repay me. By twisting your empathy, they make your integrity your own cage. You comply, not because you agree, but because you can't bear the guilt of not doing so. Lever 3, isolation. A manipulator's greatest threat isn't confrontation, it's clarity, so they cut you off from it. They isolate you emotionally, socially, sometimes even digitally. They create us versus them dynamics. They say things like, no one understands us. They're jealous of what we have. You begin to see everyone else as outsiders. And once your world shrinks, they become your only mirror, the only source of truth, affection, and identity. Lever 4, confusion. Control thrives in chaos. They'll contradict themselves, rewrite the past, shift their moods without warning. One day, you're their savior. The next, you're their enemy. And because you're constantly trying to make sense of them, you stop making sense of yourself. This is called cognitive dissonance fatigue. The exhaustion that keeps you compliant. You stop questioning because questioning feels painful. Lever 5, validation dependency. They give you bursts of approval, then withdraw it suddenly. This creates a reward-punishment cycle identical to slot machines and addictions. You never know when the next dose of affection or praise will come, and that unpredictability hooks you. You start working harder for smaller rewards, until eventually you forget you're even being trained. Lever 6, triangulation. One of the oldest and most effective weapons. They bring a third person into the dynamic, real or imagined. They'll say, unlike you, they really understand me, or I wish you could be more like them. Your competitive instinct ignites. You fight for their approval, but that approval was never meant to be given. The goal was to create emotional chaos and control the outcome. Lever 7, hope. The most dangerous one of all, because it masquerades as healing. After every conflict, after every wound, they offer hope. They say, I'll change, or we just need time. They give you just enough warmth to keep you from walking away, and that intermittent kindness resets your emotional clock. You start over, believing this time will be different. It's not hope. It's the leash tightening, again, soft enough to feel comforting, strong enough to hold you still. Neurologically, this is manipulation through reward conditioning. Every insult, every reconciliation, every apology forms a chemical pattern. Dopamine surges with validation, cortisol rises with rejection, and your brain becomes dependent on their emotional rhythm, like an addict craving both the pain and the pleasure. It's not weakness, it's neurochemistry, and they know how to play it. In the manipulator's world, truth isn't something to find, it's something to define. They rewrite narratives. They turn facts into emotions, and emotions into leverage. If you confront them with evidence, they'll twist it into accusation. Right? Why are you always attacking me? If you set a boundary, they'll interpret it as betrayal. They rewrite your reality until you start second-guessing it. This is called reality erosion. It's the final step before full submission. Once they control how you feel about events, they don't need to lie anymore. You'll lie to yourself. The manipulator doesn't need brute force. They just need you to believe that love means staying, that loyalty means forgiveness, and that kindness means compliance. That's the illusion of emotional control, the invisible empire built inside your own nervous system. But here's the truth, every manipulator leaves fingerprints, patterns, scripts, emotional trails. Now we'll expose them one by one. You'll learn to decode the invisible language of emotional control. You'll see through the smiles, the guilt, the tears, and most importantly, you'll learn how to take back your emotional autonomy. Because awareness doesn't just set you free, it makes you uncontrollable. Every story about control must end with awakening, because awareness is not born in light, it's born in pain. It's the moment you stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, why did I let them stay? This act is not about revenge, it's about reclamation. Reclaiming your mind, your emotions, your energy, your life. For too long, manipulators have written the script. Now you rewrite it. 1. The first law of freedom. Recognize the pattern. Emotional manipulation loses power the moment you see the system. Every tactic, guilt, confusion, fear, flattery, follows a predictable loop. First trigger, then emotion. After that, reaction. Finally, reward. The manipulator's control depends on one thing, you reacting instead of responding. Here's the truth. You cannot stop them from manipulating, but you can stop the loop. When you pause before reacting, when you name the emotion instead of drowning in it, shift from subject to observer. And once you become the observer, you're already free. 2. Emotional armor, the power of naming. Naming emotion is like turning on a light in a dark room. You cannot fight what you cannot see. The manipulator thrives in your confusion, in the blur between emotion and reality. When they say, you've changed, you're overreacting, you're too sensitive, they're not describing you. They're describing their fear of losing control. The antidote, label the tactic. When you think, this is guilt tripping, or this is gaslighting, you immediately remove its sting. Language becomes armor, because the brain can't be both emotional and analytical at the same time. Naming switches the mind from survival to awareness, and in that split second, you become immune. 3. The gray rock principle. Manipulators feed on reaction. Attention is their currency. So the most radical act of self-defense is indifference. The gray rock method means becoming emotionally neutral. No anger, no validation, no explanation. You stop giving them fuel. They provoke. You stay still. They accuse. You remain calm. They crave your energy. You give them silence. To them, it's death by starvation. Because control requires participation, and you've just opted out. The moment you stop performing in their emotional theater, the show ends. 4. Reclaiming power through boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They're filters. They don't block love. They block contamination. A manipulator fears boundaries more than confrontation, because a boundary isn't emotional. It's structural. It says, this is my limit. You can come closer if you respect it, but if not, you stay outside. And here's the paradox. Setting boundaries doesn't push people away. It filters out those who were never meant to stay. When you start enforcing limits without guilt, you signal to your nervous system that you're safe again. Your body relaxes, your intuition returns, and your emotions, once hijacked, begin to belong to you again. 5. The mirror technique, disarming the manipulator's mask. Manipulators thrive in emotional chaos. So the best defense is reflective calm. When they distort reality, you don't argue, you mirror. They say, "You're making me angry." You reply, "It sounds like you're angry." They say, "You don't care about me." You reply, "You feel I don't care." This subtle linguistic mirror returns ownership of emotion to them. It forces accountability without confrontation, because manipulation collapses under self-exposure. You don't need to fight fire with fire. You just have to stop letting the flame spread to your side of the match. 6. Emotional detox, reprogramming your nervous system. After manipulation, your nervous system is trained for tension. You expect the next text, the next guilt trip, the next argument. Even after they're gone, the body still awaits. That's why healing isn't intellectual, it's physiological. To detox, you must retrain your body to feel safe again. This means breathing deeply when you expect conflict, to saying no and not explaining it, rewarding calm instead of chaos. Over time, your baseline shifts from hypervigilance to clarity. You'll stop mistaking anxiety for connection and peace for boredom. That's how you rewire your reality, not through willpower but repetition. 7. Forgiveness is a weapon of freedom. Forgiveness isn't about excusing the manipulator. It's about releasing yourself, because hate keeps you tied to the very person you escaped. Forgiveness means this, I will not carry your darkness anymore. You stop analyzing them. You stop proving your worth. You stop needing closure because you create it yourself. And that's the final act of rebellion. To be unbothered by what once broke you. 8. Reclaiming autonomy, the return to self. Emotional manipulation begins with illusion, but ends with identity. When you rediscover who you are beneath the conditioning, you become untouchable. Here's the truth, You will meet manipulators again, but you won't fall for them, because you now see them. You recognize the emotional hooks before they sink in. You hear the tone, feel the pressure, sense the twist, and you walk away with peace, not guilt. Freedom isn't the absence of manipulation. It's the mastery of perception. And when you master perception, you become what manipulators fear most. Someone they cannot control. This was the dark art of emotional manipulation. In the next episode, we go even deeper. If this video opened your eyes, share it. Someone you know is still living under emotional control. Your share could be their wake-up call. Tap like if you've ever felt your emotions used against you. Comment, "I see it now," if you're done being controlled, and subscribe, because What's coming next will make you question how much of your life was ever truly yours.